When you sent me packing down Green River Valley, I knew that if you couldn't then...
Hey, this is Adam with Mile High Stash, the podcast that asks what 5 albums you would take to a remote Colorado cabin in the event of a zombie apocalypse. So the boys of summer are back. It's the week of July 4th, and not only will I be playing drums with 3 bands on July 4th at the annual Jamestown, Colorado 4th of July festival, I'll also be checking baseball box scores all day, like I do just about every day in the summer. Some people might have a portrait of Jesus on their nightstands. I know my grandparents did, but I have a portrait of Roberto Clemente. I'm a writer and a musician and I guess a podcaster now, but I'm also a ridiculous baseball fan. My brother texted me from Pittsburgh, where I'm from, a few months ago, and he told me about this band, the Baseball Project, with these 2 great singer-songwriters and members of REM, and I was hooked instantly. I still haven't seen the Baseball Project live, but their records are just awesome. Grand Salami Time, the new album by the Baseball Project, is of course about baseball in myriad ways. You can really hear those signature REM harmonies and jangly guitars, because Mike Mills and Peter Buck from REM are in the Baseball Project. But this is really a rockin' garage band that writes and plays songs about baseball. You might think that's only appealing to hardcore baseball fans, but I love language and stories as much as I love music and baseball. And there are so many baseball stories that are like folk tales, and so many weird baseball terms like the yips or the screwball or triple shy or a journeyman or a sacrifice, that you'll never hear anywhere else, and not even the best poet or James Joyce could make up. I learned words like perennial and penultimate just by growing up a baseball fan in Pittsburgh, listening to Lanny Fratteri on the radio. Anyway, singer and guitarist Steve Wynn, one of the masterminds of the Baseball Project, is my guest today on Mile High Stash. Steve is a massive baseball fan, and he's a California native. You might know from the Dream Syndicate and his solo work. Steve is married to the Baseball Project's drummer, Linda, and he helped come up with the Baseball Project idea the night that REM was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it sounds like it was a madcap idea over many beers that worked out great. The Baseball Project plays punky songs about baseball, which, I consider baseball an endless American resource for stories and vocabulary too. Steve put so much thought into his Mile High Stash choices, and I love that. He thought of it as more of an island situation, picking music to fight off zombies with coconuts too. And when Steve likened what Oakland A's owner John Fisher is doing to the A's and their fans to a zombie apocalypse, I knew this was my kind of guy. The Baseball Project, as much as it's a garage rock band that plays songs about baseball and baseball history, it's a guitar band. And today's episode of Mile High Stash, featuring Steve Wynn of the Baseball Project, is generously sponsored by the fantastic Colorado guitar shop Moncton Guitars in Broomfield, right in between Boulder and Denver. A lot of people say cheap, fast, and good. You got to pick 2. But I can honestly say from experience that Moncton Guitars does incredibly amazing guitar repairs and setups that are fast and inexpensive. All right, here's my chat with Steve Wynn of the Baseball Project. We'll talk on the other side.
Then show me what I'm really made of. More than feel, more than
Moncton Guitars has been selling vintage guitars, amps, and effects for 31 years and now has a brick-and-mortar shop conveniently located between Denver and Boulder, just off Highway 36 in Broomfield. In addition to a fine selection of vintage and used gear, Moncton Guitars also carries new equipment from major brands like Epiphone, Guild, and Marshall, along with a great selection of Colorado-built instruments. Moncton also offers accessories, lessons, and inexpensive but expert repairs and setups. So check out monctonguitars.com today for more info or just stop by. That's MONKTON Guitars in Broomfield.
So, Steve, are you originally from Los Angeles?
Born and raised in LA, lived there for the first half of my life and moved to New York City 30 years ago and lived here ever since.
So I'm guessing that you were a Dodgers fan growing up.
No, it's
No?
very complicated. No, it's funny, but that's a funny story. I became one over the years, but when I was growing up in the 70s, I was primarily a rock and roll fan and into pretty it's like the wilder stuff like the Who and Roxy Music and things like that, and of course the Stones and so being into kind of counterculture type things, the 70s Dodgers rubbed me the wrong way. That whole Steve Garvey, Ron Say, Bill Russell, it was the most white bread team, and it wasn't fun to me. So I was more of a fan of course, the A's. I see your jersey, and also of the Reds, strangely enough. It just seemed like teams with more personality, pizzazz. I just couldn't get behind, I couldn't get behind a team that just had so little personality.
Your songs certainly capture the characters of baseball, and I think some people wonder, when they start dating someone and they find out that they're really, really into baseball, like Fever Pitch, that movie, they just think it's boring. It's the same thing over and over. But your songs really capture the characters and the stories of baseball. When did you discover that there was such intrigue and there were these weird stories like Doc Ellis throwing at everybody who he saw, or even 10-cent beer night is an awesome baseball story too.
Yeah, Disco Demolition, all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as a baseball fan, and growing up I was a baseball fanatic and actually a sports writer in my teenage years. So I was always looking for the great story in baseball. I mean, every sport has great stories, of course, but baseball has most of them because it's really, of all the team sports, the sport that's most focused on the individual. I'll just say baseball is really the only team sport where you can excel or fail irregardless of your teammates.
Mm-hmm.
When you're up at bat, you're up at bat. When you're on the mound, you're on the mound. Of course, if you got a lousy fielding team behind you, it's not going to get you too far. But really, it's really a game of the individual, and baseball known some really pretty eccentric individuals over the years. So it was made for a band like ours. And for the longest time before the Baseball Project formed, I had the idea of writing songs about baseball. But to be honest, I get ideas like that all the time and often don't follow through, because if I did, I'd probably make 20 records a year.
Yeah.
But I had that in the back of my mind. And I was at, I guess, 2008, the year REM got inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They had a big party here in New York City. And Peter Buck invited me to the party, and I went there and I hung out with Scott McCoy for the first time, which is strange because we have so many friends in common, but we never actually hung out till that night. And we'd had a few drinks and we were the last to leave the party because, hey, free drinks and free food. So we're holding at the bar at the end of the night and talking about this and that. And suddenly the conversation turns to baseball. And I'm like, oh my God, you're a fan too. And we, of course, off to the races talking about baseball. And I think I said at some point, I always wanted to make a record about baseball. And Scott said, me too. And we just figured, well, first of all, we found our partner, our collaborator, and also we had to make a record together, or else the other guy might steal the idea before we got to it. So we were off and running, and it's amazing on the first album how so many of the songs were stories we'd saved up. Like I'd always want to write a song about Kurt Flood, for example, and about Fernando Valenzuela, and about Harvey Haddix was a big one I always wanted to write about, and he had his as well, Willie Mays, and and well, Blackjack McDowell's story he had about that. And so the record came really easily because, like you said, there's just so many great stories.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll never run out.
Right, exactly. Well, baseball is still happening too, so they're making new stories.
New stories, it's risky, and we do write about current players, but it's always risky because when you write about a current player, it's very likely whatever you're saying will be obsolete by the time the record comes out. Case in point, there's a song on the new record called "The All or Nothings" that Scott wrote about the All or Nothings, the guys who just hit home runs, walk, and strike out. And he, one of the players he gets on of many in that song is Joey Gallo, who's having a great year right now. So you gotta watch out with that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure by the time the record comes out, Joey will sink to his normal pattern of
right,
batting 180 and hitting 20 home runs.
That is one of the fascinating things about baseball, especially as a hardcore Pirates fan, is that it doesn't matter what you do for a week or even a month. Kind of who you are as a player over 162 games is gonna.
It's going to come out.
Come out. Yeah.
It's true, though. Well, look at the Pirates. I mean, the Pirates had that great start. And
incredible.
Yeah, I mean, a little rough patch right now, but hopefully they'll keep it going.
We'll see.
I'm going to a Pirates game. My wife, Linda, who's also the drummer of the band.
Yeah.
It's her birthday next month. And this is, what a baseball nutty couple we are. For her birthday, I'm taking her to Pittsburgh to see a Pirates game.
Fantastic. Yeah. They might not have the best team, but I really think that stadium and that view is just like no other. It's amazing.
Agreed. And that's why I'm taking her. Actually, we played there right across the river in an open field with the baseball project like 10 years ago, something like that. And Mike and Scott and I went to the game, and Linda had plans to meet a friend. And I said to her, I'm so bummed you didn't go. It's the most beautiful park I've ever seen. So we've been planning to go back the longest time, and we're finally going to do it.
Are you going to stop by the Clemente Museum in Lawrenceville?
We've been there. We were really lucky enough. We went to we had a show, actually a different time we went there. We played at the Club Cafe on some tour, and the mayor of Pittsburgh, I'm spacing his name, the cool guy. I think he's not the mayor anymore.
Oh my gosh,
totally heroic guy. And
Peduto.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He's a big fan. He came to the gig.
Oh, wow.
So we talked to him, and all of a sudden somebody was there and said, well, you guys are all together. I want to take you after the gig to the Clemente Museum. So there we were with the mayor and a few fans and the whole baseball project at midnight, getting a private tour at the Clemente Museum and having a glass of wine at the little wine bar downstairs. It was almost like we were dreaming. It was a perfect night. Yeah. You've been there, right?
I have not. I go home once every few years, and I haven't been able to make an appointment yet, because you have to kind of make an appointment. But that is something that I'm really excited to do someday. Yeah.
You should. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I have made numerous pilgrimages now to San Juan and Carolina to see baseball down there and see the Clemente statues and other things down there.
Oh, that's great. Well, that'd be amazing. I'd love to do that.
Yeah. Did you play baseball when you were growing up?
No. In fact, of the members of the band, I'm the least athletic. I mean, I can throw the ball around, but I was never on any kind of team. I was a sports writer. Those who can't do right sports, I think is a cliche, and that's true in my case. But I'm in a band, pretty good athletes, but not me.
As you got into playing rock and roll, because I hope that people listening, look up your extensive career before the baseball project too. But as you started being in bands, did you see the parallels of the camaraderie and teamwork, and even one of the parallels that I see as a touring drummer as well as a baseball player on Wednesday nights in Boulder is box scores as well. I see a set list as a box score too. I just think there's so many parallels.
So many. You're right. I'm a drummer. That's great. Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously appreciate drummers. Yes, many. I mean, for one thing, you're right. I think the reason so many musicians like baseball is that it's very stat driven, and so is music. You can debate, the best all-time team the same way you can debate the 5 best lead guitarists of all time, or 5 records to take on a desert island. I mean, it's the two things are very, very close in that way. And also as far as being a rock and roll touring band, the first single on the new album is a song called Journeyman that I wrote with Peter Buck.
Yeah.
And the lyrics they're about obviously a journeyman left-handed relief pitcher, but the same story could be people like us who've been in bands for 40 years and just
Mhm.
go and play gigs and go to town, and it's every night's a new city. Very similar things. So I think that yeah, they're definitely, even if I can't maybe, you know, throw a ball 100 miles an hour, or have my exit velocity is very low, but
Yeah.
that all that aside, there are similarities.
Who knew that two members of REM were that into baseball? I mean, that is just really shocking to me and cool.
Well, the truth of the matter is Mike is a fanatic. Mike is a
Yeah.
long time big fan, Braves fan. Scott McCoy is huge fan. Linda and I are huge fans. Peter is more of a theoretical fan. He's not a sports geek, although he really does enjoy it, but he enjoys reading about it. He enjoys the history because he's
Yeah.
an avid reader, um, and curious guy. So I think from being in the band, he's become more of a fan. But if there was a baseball quiz on stage after the show, I think Peter would probably bow out.
Yeah. Have you had any response from baseball players, either active players or retired players?
A bit here and there. The reality, it would be nice to have more. There've been a few here and there. Black Jack McDowell's a fan. We wrote a song about him. He's become a friend of the band.
Mm.
Lemmy Pardo, relief pitcher for the Red Sox, become a friend, and he's a fan. So there are a few out there. But the truth of the matter is, most of our fans in the baseball world are sports writers, executives, and announcers, and we have a lot of fans
Mhm.
in that realm of things, which is great. But the players, I guess, when I go to get the games, I listen to the walk-up music, hoping
Mhm.
I'll hear somebody play, the Pixies or the Velvet Underground. I never hear that, but I always make a note. It's like, if somebody's playing something cool, I got to track that guy down. It doesn't happen that often.
No, I mean, they used to put out the Rockies list of walk-up songs before every season, and I was always so fascinated with that. And lately, I gotta say, it's been weak. It's been either reggaeton or like a bro country. Those are like the two. Those are the two things.
Exactly. And occasionally, like the Mets have like one of the guys in the Mets, forgot who it is, plays Skinner when he comes up. Whoever that
Yeah,
is. And Peter Alonso, I think, has Rush, maybe some crazy like that, and that's as good as it gets.
yeah.
I got so excited when Hideki Matsui was with the Yankees, and he would play either Cheap Trick or the Beatles. I was like, yeah, that's rocking as I've seen.
What
And
would you want as your walk-up song?
yeah, that's always a question, I always have a different answer. I think the go-to I had a good one the other day, but the go-to is always "Search and Destroy" by the Stooges. That would be
Nice.
just, yeah, that mean business when you play that song.
My team on Wednesday nights in Boulder, uh, we picked walk-up songs, and sometimes we do play that, and I always go with Motorhead. Uh,
Uh,
but we have some great, much more diverse choices than major league players. We have some Queen and some Madonna and
mhm.
stuff like that. Um,
Love
uh,
the walk up in your once a week league. That's fantastic.
this brings us to our ridiculous question of, if there was a zombie apocalypse and you were stranded in a cabin in the mountains in Colorado, and well, unfortunately, there would be no baseball to follow unless it was in your
Oh yeah.
in your mind. But um, what 5 albums would you bring with you?
You mean like if I could have brought the complete broadcast of Vin Scully? That would have been
There you go.
if I could find that. That would be a possibility. Um, this is a great. I mean, of course, I love stuff like this. And I was thinking today when I was thinking it over. I was wondering if your guests ever bring the whole zombie thing into the answer, but I didn't. But I'm wondering that's a specific thing. I was thinking, would you need songs to ward off zombies? Which I didn't go that way.
Oh, I did have one guy say that he wanted to play Beethoven as battle music, because he would fight the zombies, and that would be his perfect battle music. Yeah.
Great, yeah. Not knowing what zombies like and don't like, I didn't go that direction, but I
Yeah.
did kind of either cheat or think about it way too much, and I chose all box sets and compilations. I figure if I'm on that island for the rest of my life, I don't want to be locked into somebody's idea of an album and the album sequence. I would like, oh my God, as much as I love I don't know, Exile on Main Street or Marquee Moon, or after a while I'd be like, I'm tired of this sequence. I don't want to live with this, I don't want to
Yeah.
live vision of somebody else. So I chose compilation of boxes because I figured that way I can kind of make my new album, my own album, fresh every day on the island while I'm, fighting
Yeah.
off zombie
Right.
coconuts. So should I name them all? Why don't you just name them right off, or do you want to kind of to go into one by one? What's the general form?
I would love a description of each one and what it means to you and why you chose it,
Okay, I started with the biggest cheat of all because it's like a 15 CD, 20 CD box set, and it's Chuck Berry's "Any Old Way You Choose It," which came out on Bear Family a couple of years ago, which is one of my favorite records in my collection. It's the complete studio recordings of Chuck Berry,
Oh,
and
fantastic.
like it was a gift from Linda for my birthday one year, and I just loved it because, you know, you, we all know the Chuck Berry hits and even kind of some of the deep cuts. But this has everything, and
Yeah.
it just shows what a great songwriter he was and how he was prolific and actually really good in the '60s.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously when he came out of prison with No Particular Place to Go and Nadine, I mean, two of his best songs, You Never Can Tell, that was great. But he kind of kept going under the radar um, all the way through. So just yeah, I'd be, you know, I guess the complete Chuck Berry would mean I could reinvent a an idealized version of America that he put forth. But I figured there would be I could nostalgically just sift through his stories and his tales. That's the first.
Fantastic.
That'll keep me busy for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe zombies are scared of Chuck Berry. I'm not sure but he should be.
He was tough.
By the way, there's a great biography about Chuck Berry that just came out. Really, really great, written by R.J. Smith, and I recommend it um, entirely. One of the best rock books I've ever read.
Oh,
Really good.
nice. I'll
Really,
check it out.
it came out in the last year. Um, the second would be one of the records that changed my life is Nuggets, the Lenny Kaye
Oh,
compilation.
yeah. Yeah.
And I would be greedily take the one that came out this year on Record Store Day because it has more Nuggets. I think it's five discs, and I don't have a
Oh,
copy
wow.
yet. Get that, but the original is fine too. That's the record that I discovered that record when I was my first year of college and did not know I think any of the songs. Maybe I knew Pushing Too Hard, but not many at all. And just the idea of bands sounding like bands, and kind of some of the bands on that record are versions of the Yardbirds or the Stones or the Byrds or the Beatles, but they're more raw and
Yeah.
more
Well,
raw and more raw, more just kind of just like trying and missing the mark in their own beautiful way. And that became kind of a real touchstone for everything I did from that point on. Baseball Project, we're all huge fans of Garage, so the Nuggets would be right up there. And it's the 50-year anniversary right now, so
hmm,
to mention that.
yeah.
Third one for the more contemplative moments on the island, I went with the Miles Davis Jack Johnson box set.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
the
I haven't
Jack,
heard the box set. Yeah.
the album, the Jack Johnson
Oh, yeah.
album.
Yeah. It's like a 50-minute song. It's fantastic.
Oh, good
Yeah.
one. Well, the box set is great and also not great, but the way it's not great is fascinating too. A lot of it's all the raw material, all the performances
Yeah.
that end up edited together in the perfect way by Teo Macero to be the final record. And a lot of people who played on the record have said they don't like it because those things weren't meant to be released. They're just long,
Right.
endless. And the art is what they did with it. However, if you like the record, it's great to hear all the pieces that went into it. So as a musician, as a music fan, I love hearing all and the raw. Anybody who played on it who would say that wasn't meant for release is crazy because it's all great. I mean, it's come on, it's
Yeah.
like it's
That's
Miles, it's Hancock, it's
Wayne
Sugar,
Shorter.
yeah, Wayne Shorter. It's like it's
Yeah.
wrong with the raw goods. So that would be another one. Great, yeah, great. I think it's 5 or 6 CD box set, really killer.
That's kind
Um,
of like the Stooges, the Funhouse box set that just has like 20 takes of everything, and it's worth listening to if you love that music and um you're fascinated with how things came together.
it is kind of a deep dive, that one for
Yeah,
sure. Especially since they don't they don't vary that much. They've kind of got their things
right.
like, oh, yeah, a little different that time, but still, hey, I think I once spent an entire year listening to Funhouse every day, so
Nice.
I can I can I can handle plenty of it.
Yeah.
See, number 4 is King Chronicles, which was do you know that I see
No,
you
I
see
don't think so.
it was a double album compilation of hits and B-sides and rarities that came out on reprise in, I'm going to say, the mid 70s. And it's a great, it might even be out of print now. And Kink Chronicles, spelled both, well, K for Kinks and K for Chronicles,
Yeah.
with great liner notes by the rock critic John Mendelsohn, New York Times writer. And it's just, it's kind of, in a way, I mean, I love the Kinks growing up. I was a fan of the records, but it really is what made me a Kinks fan, because you've got, alongside some of the hits, all these songs were on, the Dave Davies solo songs, and the songs that by now, if you're a Kings fan, you might know, but at the time they were all unknown. Just a
Yeah,
great,
that's awesome.
beautifully. It's one of the cases of a compilation and a rarity thing actually being great in its own right as a properly sequenced, realized. So
Some of my favorite Kinks songs are so weird, like Australia. That's one of my favorite Kinks songs. It's just it's like an advertisement for a country, And
yeah,
some bands, you really have to take a deep dive to find out what makes them special. And it's not only the songs you heard on the radio growing up,
yeah, you're right. Some bands are really well serviced by a greatest hits record, and that's all you need.
Yeah,
And some doesn't do them justice.
yeah,
And right, the Kinks is definitely one of those bands, you know, and maybe Chuck Berry's we were talking about earlier, but
yeah,
all the best that you can say. Here are their 12, their top Apple, Spotify, whatever tracks. Like,
right.
well, all right, those were all familiar tracks, but to really appreciate them, you got to go down to the things that didn't quite make it, and then what makes them tick. And
I
the Kinks,
was
that band.
I was in a grocery store the other day, and it's like a mainstream, supermarket in Boulder, and they were playing Harry Rag, like loud. And I said, I love this. I'm gonna come back to this place. This is this is fantastic.
I'm trying to imagine how that would happen.
I don't know, but I mean that's another example of a song that if you have any interest in the Kinks, like you have to hear these oddball songs that they did, because they're just as good as the most famous ones.
Yeah.
I
track that one down, even if you
yeah.
find, a recreation of it. But if you can find the record with the liner notes, the whole thing makes it happen. And having heard that, like, maybe when I was 15, it just, blew open the doors and made me a Kink completist, all K's included.
That's great. All right, number 5, I believe. There's one left.
One was talking about compilation. One of the earlier, retrospectives I got into, which was the Biograph box set by Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I was already a Dylan fanatic and knew most of the songs, but somehow I don't know how much thought went into it, but I love the way it's put together, because it's kind of all over the map, and it's not obvious choices, and not even often his best songs.
Right.
But it's a weird. It's kind of like the randomness of how it's thrown together from different eras and different styles suits Bob Dylan, because he is kind of a big mess thrown into a blender, and you get it. So I kind of like that as an entry point for Bob Dylan. So I'd probably pour through that and figure out what is he going on about there, and that would keep me for a couple weeks on the island.
And that's another artist that you cannot appreciate, until you listen to the incredibly weird stuff that didn't end up on the albums. I'm not sure if Moonshiner is on there, but that's one of his greatest recordings.
It's not on there. No, what is that from?
It's an old-timey song that he made into his own thing, kind of like I was young when I left home, and he recorded Moonshiner when he was probably 21 or 22, and he sounds like he has the the wisdom and experience and world weariness of an 80-year-old frontiersman. It's like it's a fantastic track.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up because I don't know that, so I will try to find that.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about baseball, that makes me also appreciate what you're doing, is all of this language that you don't hear outside of baseball, and it's so great to hear it put to music. Is that something that you've thought of a lot, is appreciating and utilizing, this language that's so... An example I always think of that you never hear outside of baseball that is such a fantastic phrase is a triple shy of the cycle. You would never hear that anywhere else, but what poetic, strange language, you know?
Yeah, I believe Scott had a song called "A Triple Shy of the Cycle" that didn't make the album,
Oh, wow.
which kind of plays around with how beautiful and ludicrous
Mm.
that and to get very improperly racy and kind of silly and not even, but somebody in a chat group we were in said, well, I'm not going to get into that. I can, but he had a really good song, kind of taking all the things in life that would equate to being a triple shy of the cycle.
Right,
And,
right, right. Yeah.
I mean, I think in the songs we write, it's obvious when you listen to Baseball Project that we're big fans with a long history of being fans, and we love working that stuff into the songs.
Mm.
We love working in phrases that any fan will know, and they feel more, well, again, going back to Chuck Berry, the reason his songs are so great are the details,
Yeah.
the or phrases he makes up too, words he makes up, but the way he ties in all this very vivid imagery. It's
Yeah.
not just a it's not just a car that pulls up. It's not just a Cadillac. It's a coffee colored Cadillac, and I
Yeah.
think baseball, we try to do the same thing, try to say something where you really feel like you might be listening to a call of a game, or you might be talking to a friend in a bar about baseball. And we try to, not only we try to, we love bringing those details because that's who we are.
And it's definitely a language. I mean, if you go into a bar anywhere in America and you don't have the same politics as somebody or the same religion as somebody, if you speak that language of baseball, it's the same with family too. A lot of times there's nothing else to talk about but if you speak this language of baseball, it's a beautiful way of relating.
It is. It is. I'm smiling because the original lineup of the Dream Syndicate, my old band, the guitarist and I kind of stopped seeing eye to eye. We eventually drifted apart. We were really good friends who just kind of went in different directions. And even at the point towards the end of our working relationship where we were no longer talking and each one annoyed the other one endlessly, we could still talk about baseball.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't like you. I don't like what you say. I don't like what you're doing. Everything you do bugs me. But man, how about that game last
Yeah.
night?
Do you find it harder to write songs about teams that, like the Rockies, might not have? My Pirates have, I believe, 147 years, straight of playing on the north side of Pittsburgh, and the Rockies are celebrating their 30th year. Do you have a hard time, maybe writing songs about a team like the Rays or the Rockies that just don't have that depth of history?
Well, maybe not for that reason, but more because, again, the players we write about are not always, but often in our sweet spot of like 70s and 60s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the same way our music the music we love. I mean, when you hear our music, look, there's a lot of 70s and 60s in what we do. All of our bands from REM to -5 to Dream Syndicate. It's not all that we listen to or all that we reference, but it is kind of, the sweet spot. So same thing with baseball players. So yeah, we're writing often about a time. Look, Scott wrote a song about Ed Delahanty, and there was no Rockies back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so we don't write about newer teams as much, although we have, connection with each of those teams. Great Rockies story, by the way. And this should be a song, is we played at Coors Field about 10 years ago. We were on tour, and they asked us to come play before the game on the party deck,
Mm-hmm.
on Todd Helton weekend. On the weekend they were going to retire his number, and it was a big deal. We said, come on out, you guys play on the party deck at 4 o'clock, play till 5 o'clock. You can have free beers and then put your gear away and you can watch the game. It's like,
Yeah.
perfect. VIP tickets, you're gonna get the whole deal, the lounge, whatever, all the perks. Like, well, count us in. So we played the gig, really fun. They broadcast the whole thing on the big screen out there, and we're
Mm-hmm.
having a finish, pack up our gear, get it all in the van, and ready to watch a baseball game. And we get our liaison with the team approached and said, bit of a problem. There's not going to be a game.
Oh, wow.
There had been a sewage failure in the stadium.
Oh, God.
And the game was called off. I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that happening. I mean, they had a sold out crowd there. Everyone had to go home.
Oh,
And
Lord.
the upside was we got to see the game. We had a night off the next night. We got to see the game
Yeah.
the next night. But that would be that's the kind of fight about the night. The night not the Colorado plumbing backed up or something like that.
I thought stuff like that only happened at the Coliseum in Oakland. That's a normal sort of occurrence. Now they have a possum who's living in one of the TV booths. Do you know about that?
I haven't heard about that.
Oh, it's incredible. So, about 2 weeks into this current season, the visiting TV guys, I think it was the Mets guys, they were told, that they can't go in the visitors' TV booth, and they would have to go in this smaller little room with a window. And they said, why? And they said, well, there was a possum there in the off season, and we didn't really do anything about it. And so now it's the possum's home, and it smells so bad and is so full of his droppings, and it's just his now.
Insane. That's great.
Which brings me to my next question. Actually, you have a song that's called "We Are the Oakland A's." So, what are you going to do if they're the Vegas A's?
See, there you go. I guess we'll be singing on this year because we got to get it while we can. That's Scott's song. Great song. Scott is a A's fan and Giants and Mariners fan. It's complicated. Yeah, good question. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, will we still sing that one? We're not going to change it to "We Are the Las Vegas A's." That's for sure.
Yeah,
Really sad. Kind of a bummer. I just watched that Reggie Jackson documentary, which is great. Have you seen it?
No.
Fantastic. And it really does when you watch. Well, I watched that maybe the week before Vida Blue died, so I had a lot of A's nostalgia happening last month. Just those were great teams, a great era, and it's sad to see that they're leaving and that 50 people show up at every game now, or whatever it is. It's just too bad.
It's so much like the movie Major League. It's almost like the owner watched that movie and said, I want to do that. The Oakland A's are how I fell in love with baseball, even though I'm from Pittsburgh. When I was playing Little League, I don't know, I played for 8 years or so. And when I started, I was 6. And around that time was Ricky Henderson, Carney Lansford, Jose Canseco, Mark McGuire. I remember the whole lineup. I just loved them. And I didn't even have a concept of where Oakland was. I just knew that these guys were amazing, and they were such characters, Dave Stewart, the death stare. And in my 20s, I lived in San Francisco, and it just aligned with the Moneyball years. And actually the last game that's the climax of the Moneyball film was probably my second or third A's game, when it culminated with the 20 wins in a row. And there's something about having a horrible hunk of concrete in the middle of an industrial nothing, that is also the only reason anybody goes there is to watch baseball. And there's also some romance in that, because a lot of the new parks, they're amazing cathedrals, but sometimes it feels like a lot of people are just there to be entertained by the atmosphere and not necessarily the game. So to see those fans in Oakland lose their team, especially since they already lost the Warriors and the Raiders, it's pretty sad.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I have a friend who's in a band, great Bay Area band called Rain Parade. I don't know if you know them, but he's a singer that, and he always would talk about how great it was. Conversely, what you're saying is that for $400 a year, he could have season tickets, and it came with a discount on beer. And oh my God, 400 tickets might buy you a pair of Yankees tickets.
Yeah.
I was jealous. That's the upside, I guess, of being a fan of a team like that. But it is sad, and I can't, look. I don't want to knock Vegas. In fact, the bass player of the Dream Singer lives in Las Vegas and has turned me on to a lot of the cool things about the city that are not, but all things only a local would know. So it's very cool. But it doesn't feel like, let's just say, a lot of things can go wrong with that. I mean, first of all, I'm completely baffled by the fact, and I guess you'll know where I stand on this issue, that Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame. Yet every in baseball now is for gambling. Yeah. And the same thing. I know not gambling on your own team or gambling on baseball, and it's a cardinal rule. But what a hypocrisy in that.
Yeah.
To say the major rule, unbreakable rule of baseball is no gambling. All right. But if you're a fan, gamble away, ruin your life, destroy your lose your house and your family and your car and whatever else in your job, but gamble away. It's a little crazy. And having a team in Vegas, I mean, forget it. That's crazy.
Well,
So
they still don't really have a viable site. They're saying that now it's going to be right on the strip, like on a corner
yeah,
of the Tropicana site. And that, first of all, doesn't seem like enough space for a Major League Baseball stadium. And then second, it's like, if you really were really into baseball, and wanted to take your family to a game, where are you going to park? And what's it going to be like? So they still have to figure it out.
yeah, yeah. It seems very. And in the meantime, I guess the A's will just keep being lousy because they won't put any money to the team. So as long as
Yep.
they'll be like zombie. Hey, back to the
Yeah.
zombies.
Kind of the last thing I want to ask you is just about, you're going to play a lot of shows this year, it sounds like, and you have a new record coming out that's really exciting. What's it like to tour as, a baseball themed band, and who are the fans that come to the shows? What's the atmosphere like?
Well, it's funny. I mean, because of course, we have a lot of history in the band between all bands. So that's a huge list, and all those bands we've been in, especially obviously REM, but all the bands we've been in have a lot of fans come with the territory. But what's happened over the years is the baseball project has its own fans, and it's almost like people well, not quite Rocky Horror Picture Show esque, but people do show up dressed for action. There'll be a
Yeah.
lot of baseball jerseys and caps in the audience, and people get into that aspect of the band. That's a fun thing. And being, look, like I said, 4 of the 5 members of the band are baseball geeks. So when we're on tour, it's a very different way of touring where we will, whenever possible, do sound check the first 4 or 5 innings of a game
Mm,
and get back and walk on stage. And that's,
that's great.
that's the idea of fun. So we do that. It's a very different touring and very different club situation than most bands. And we have fun with that. We'll generally hang out to the show and sign merch and talk to people. And it's, typically when you're a band signing merch at the table afterwards, you'll talk about all kinds of things, but people you're talking to in the cities. But at the baseball merch booth, it's pretty much like a post-game show for whatever's
Yeah.
happening in a league that night. Or people will give us, scores of games happening while we're on stage while we're playing. It's like, hey, the Yankees just lost. Tough luck. Thanks, buddy.
That's awesome. One last thing that just popped in my head. Have you written any songs yet about, your feelings on the rule changes, like the Ghost Runner and extra innings and things like that?
No, and it would have been great. That's something I think we were thinking about when we made this record. Is that we knew, bear in mind, we made the record last May, so we knew they were coming. We hadn't seen them implemented. Um, it would. We actually did something, maybe I don't know, early on in the band after our band's career after our second album, where we did a song every month for ESPN. It became
Right.
ended up being an EP, an LP called the Broadside Ballads, and for the duration of the season, we kind of gave ourselves a rule of we would put up a new song that had to be written, recorded, and released within 1 week, keeping it current. We had a lot of fun that year with current events, and it would be fun doing that right now. And of course, if we did the rule changes would play into it. But I can tell you, I think everyone in the band is pretty united as fans of the pitch clock, fans of larger bases, fans of the no shift, and we're all anti Ghost Runner too. So that's
Yeah.
kind of.
What about the DH? Where do you stand on that?
I've grown to be okay with it. I don't. I was sad when the National League adopted it because I enjoyed still seeing pitchers hitting,
Mm,
and back there were some, obviously what Kershaw and DeGrom and a few other.
yeah.
Bonnie, of course, echoes that saying, but I I don't know. I got mixed feelings about it. I've come around as a
Yeah.
person who grew up in a National League town. Well, the Angels sort of, but being in a National League city, I didn't love it, but it's part of the game now. So I've come around to that.
Yeah. I
But they
like
gotta
it
get
better than it's better than the Ghost Runner thing. It doesn't feel like uh a major league thing to me. It feels it made sense when the pandemic was happening and you kind of just wanted to get things over with and get a game in, but
Mhm.
now that there aren't capacity limits at games and restrictions like that, I really feel like they should bring back that mystique that the game could go on forever. That's one of my favorite things about baseball is you never know when it would end.
Absolutely. And it's just, I mean, I'm sure I'm saying things you already would feel as well, but the pitch clock and larger bases and banning the shift are kind of helping to bring the game back to what it was.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not crazy you've never heard it before. It's just basically to correct things got out of hand.
yeah.
The ghost completely, it's like changing the game entirely. And it's just not, that's not the way, like you say, it takes away some of the possible infinity of the game itself. And also it's a whole different strategy. Like, what do it messes with, now I say it messes with stats, but they did a good job of somehow, I guess the ghost window doesn't affect the pitcher's ERA. I've never quite,
Oh, really?
think that was my first reaction. Like, well, that's going to mess up all the stats, but I think they have it built in where the ghost runner is not credited to the pitcher in the inning. So, but still, you're having runs score that wouldn't score otherwise. I don't know. Not a fan. Fighting being against the DH would be like, being against electric guitars, saying, "Man,
Yeah.
music hasn't been. Get over it. That's the way it is."
The next time I go to a game, I'm going to shout out Judas, when the DH comes up in a National League town.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me. I'm excited for the next baseball project show in Colorado. I will absolutely come by and talk baseball at the merch table.
That'd be great. It'd be really fun to hang with you. And I hope we do it. Like I say, right now, there's nothing planned. I know we want to get there. So hopefully by the end of the year or early next year.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve.
We are the curse of Coors Field. So maybe we can come back and have another game canceled again. Maybe we have back since then.
It's a great stadium. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Fun talking to you. I'm in reclining night mode now, but it's been really fun.
Thank you so much, man.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon.
That was Steve Wynn of the Baseball Project and me talking about music and baseball and the great Americana that comes with folk heroes like Doc Ellis and Reggie Jackson and even you, Steve Blass, you and your yips. Check out the new Baseball Project album, Grand Salami Time, and check them out on tour everywhere. Check out the Jamestown 4th of July celebration this week if you're in Colorado as well. That's been going on up in Jamestown for, 140 years. I'll be playing drums up there with Clay Rose of Gasoline Lollipops and Rolling Harvest and Katie Farmer, otherwise known as Kate Farmer, and probably watching out for Anvil Bombs up there too. See you next Monday, as usual, for another episode of Mile High Stash. Leave a review on Apple Podcast if you can, because it really does help. God bless America. God help America. We really need it. God bless Andrew McCutcheon.